All right, we will call the joint session between the Ripon City Council and the Ripon Planning Commission workshop to order. We're gonna have a roll call vote for this, or vote, just roll call in general? No vote.
Councilmember Tim Wheeler, Leo Zuber.
Here.
Mike Restusha.
Present.
Vice Mayor Dean Euchre. Mayor Daniel DeGraff.
I am here.
Commissioner George Salgin.
Here.
Harry Barton.
Here.
James West. Mike Garcia. Deborah Vanessen. David Collins.
Okay, well, just kind of before we get started, I just want to say thank you to everybody. I know it's always challenging to try and make it together to some of these meetings when it's unplanned, not on our normal schedule. So thanks for everyone for being here. With that, we'll pass it over to Mr. Zeidervart.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like to welcome everyone to the workshop this evening. This is for the Diamond Pet Food Expansion Project. Tonight we have with us Mark Ferguson from Diamond Pet Food and Randy Frazier from York Engineering. Also joining us via Zoom is Mike Parker from Ascent Environmental, who did all the work on the EIR for the project, and Jody Smith, who's the legal counsel for Diamond, I believe is on the phone as well. The purpose of this workshop tonight is twofold. One is to bring the City Council and more importantly, the Ripon Planning Commission up to speed on Diamond's expansion project. And secondly is to allow the council members, planning commissioners, and the general public an opportunity to gather information about the project and also ask questions regarding the project. Let's see if I can get this clicker here to work. There we go. Sorry about that. So tonight's workshop will follow the agenda listed here in the slide. First, the city staff will give a brief presentation about the project scope and process to date. Secondly, Diamond will narrate a small presentation regarding the plant, the proposed project, pet food odor history of the plant, and mitigation measures taken to date. Third, city staff will summarize the proposed project and review the next steps. And then finally, we will open it up for questions and comments from the City Council and Planning Commission. And then secondly, from the general public. We do have some folks that have joined us online. So the project scope in front of you, we did get an application in November of 2017 from Diamond Pet Food to apply to add a fourth pet food production line within their facility and for the addition of an RTO system to mitigate existing and potential future odors from the facility. Early on in the project application process, two things became apparently evident. The RTO, which is the regenerative thermal oxidizers, the RTO system to abate pet food odors needed to be installed immediately. Therefore, Diamond Pet commissioned the design permitting the installation of an RTO system that came online in December of 2018. And secondly, an environmental impact report was needed for the project to ensure appropriate project impacts were being mitigated according to CEQA. As such, an EIR for the project was kicked off in November of 2018. So the EIR process, there's several steps in the EIR process. First, there's an initial study or notice of preparation, which had the review period from November 14th, 2018 through December 18th, 2018. A notice of preparation, it's a brief notice sent by the lead agency, which is the City of Ripon, to notify the responsible agencies and the public that an EIR is going to be prepared. The NOP or notice of preparation is meant to advise and solicit comments and suggestions regarding the preparation of the EIR, environmental issues to be addressed in the EIR, and any other related issues from interested parties, including interested or affected members of the public. After the initial the notice of preparation and the initial study were prepared, preparation of a draft EIR commenced that started in December of 2018 and actually ran all the way through to August of 2020. In August of 2020, we did release the draft EIR for public review. That took place August 28th, 2020, and it ran through, the comment period ran through October 12th, 2020. Basically, the public review period for the draft EIR provides public notice of the availability of the draft EIR and opens it up for a public comment period. During the comment period, the public is invited to submit written comments on the draft EIR. Once the public review period is completed and all comments received, preparation of the final EIR can commence, which includes responses to the comments received during the comment period. And then 10 days prior to any action on the final EIR, which is slated to take place at the April 19th Planning Commission, the final EIR must be made public. So we're kind of right in the middle of the receiving all the comments. The comment period has been closed, and the preparation of the final EIR has commenced and is wrapping up as we speak. So the next steps really left in this process or project would be the Planning Commission will be holding a public meeting on April 19th, 2021 to do two things. First of all, would be to certify the final EIR for the project, and then also to make a determination on the project, which is the project is the addition of a fourth pet food production line within Diamond's Pet Food's current facility. So with that, I think, Diamond, I'll turn it back over to you guys, and you guys can step through yours.
Okay. Next slide there, just give you a brief history of where Diamond's at. So in 2010, purchased the facility, previously a pet food or a paper mill, and was issued permits to install 3 production lines. About a year and a half, almost 2 years later, we commenced production in 2012. And about 4 years later, we were approaching capacity again. And so we're looking to for additional 4th production line. So in 2017, started the CEQA process, and then started and installed the RTOs in 2018. So 2020, the public notice and the draft EIR went out, and here we are in 2021, first, second quarter, looking for the City of Ripon's EIR approval. So next slide here, I can do that. Yeah, I'll back that. Okay, so that's just a brief overview of the plant layout. So the intent there is just to show you the process of the plant. If you're looking towards the east and along 99, the raw materials, all the raw product, the constituents of the feed come into the plant. The blue line there represents some other ingredients as well. They all come together there where we call it extrusion. We'll see some slides of that later where the product's cooked. And then starting with the yellow line there, the product's dried, go through a dual pass dryer. We'll show you that, like 260 degrees for 25, 30 minutes. And then on into the warehouse where the yellow line is. And then again, the other ones where the solar panels are on the roof. That's all warehousing for shipping out. Next slide is just a little bit more detail, the same thing. The product is just a continuous flow. The product comes in, the product goes out. That's about it there, not to get caught up in the details. Okay, this slide here, the intent of this slide is to show the current 3 production lines. There in the lower corner, there's an empty void there. That's where the plant, when it was originally built, was designed for 4 process lines, and we left the 4th, that spot open there for the 4th line. I also want to point out that all the exhaust that comes off the cookers, the extruders we call them, that's all ducted to the RTOs, and we'll see more of that. Here's the dryers I mentioned earlier. Again, the space there for the 4th line. I will mention that Diamond Pet Foods history, they have 5 plants now, and about every 4th or 5th year, they built an additional plant across the nation. So to know in 4 years that we would need another line, that was evident to us in the beginning. So what I want to also mention here is you'll see all the ducking there. That too, early on in the stages, when we did all the surveys and the studies to determine where the odors are coming from, this is another source off the dryers, much like an oven in the kitchen. you know if a apple pie is being baked, you can smell it as the exhaust comes off the oven. So the odor's being abated off of those dryers as well. So let's not get too caught up in all this here, but this does depict the existing 3 lines and a 4th line and all the devices that would produce odors and how they're all ducted to a common header at the very top there. And those are all directed to the RTOs. So all the odor producing machineries are all go into a common ducking system to be treated by the RTOs. Randy, can you speak to this slide?
Yeah, the next slide here is a slide that shows the trends, the monthly odor complaint trends since the plant started up. To the far left, you see that red, area there. That was when the plant first started in 2012, ran like that until 2014, without any type of RTO or anything like that controlling the odors. Then the blue section is where the first line of odor abatement was installed, the cold plasma injection. We had great hopes for that. Mark will talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but but you can kind of see the trends there. I want to point out one thing. You see how they go up and then down and get real low, and then they go up again and down. The down side of it is during the summertime when there's really good ventilation in the valley. It's warm. There's a lot of upflow, and the wintertime is the worst time. The weather is very, very difficult. That's why this has been a challenge here because of the inversion layers and the way it just kind of clamps down with very little wind in the wintertime, colder months. The yellow section there is when we had both the plasma injection and the injection of an odorant to kind of a sort of a more pleasant, agreeable. But as you can see, we had a pretty good uptick in that period too. So it was really clear that something else had to be done. And the last section in the green there is where the RTO regenerative thermal oxidizer started to operate. And I'll talk a little bit more about the details of how those operate in a minute. But you can see how the odors have dropped way down, and it's been a good thing. And learned awful lot, especially the first year, 2019, when those were first basically got a full year of operation. The next slide, I'll just mention, just present some of the details on those same odor complaints. This time it's doing it just by year summaries. And we're summarizing the numbers of complaints that were actually confirmed by an air district inspector. That's the normal process. Air district comes out after they get a complaint as quickly as possible. They've been coming out really quickly lately, like within an hour, which is really good. Really helps to find out what's going on. And then we have the unconfirmed odor complaints, and those numbers, the confirmed numbers stay up quite high. So in other words, early on in the first few years, there'd be an odor complaint, inspector would come out and they would be able to confirm it. They'd smell it too. It was still there. It was lingering in the air. But as time has gone on, it's gotten to where the odor complaints are mostly unconfirmed now. In fact, in 2020, there were no confirmed complaints at all. So next slide.
So I'll speak to this odor mitigation history. So 2012, 2013, there was an odor study conducted. That's where I mentioned earlier where how we went about determining which pieces of equipment needed to be abated. And through that process, we determined that cold plasma was a recommended choice. Briefly, how that came about, the most deciding factor for me was when I spoke to the family owner of a pet food manufacturer in Ogden, Utah. And Ogden's about 60,000 people. It's a skiing community, and they're at the base of the mountain. And they had similar situations that we have here in the wintertime. And they were pleased, and Mr. Benken recommended to me to go with the cold plasma system because it was working for them. The second thing was it was a much smaller carbon footprint. So when it comes to air pollution control and getting the system permitted, it'd be a lot easier because it wouldn't be producing as much NOx and those types of things. Definitely cost was a concern, and ongoing cost was a concern. So that cold plasma system, we installed it. The cost associated with that at that time was about $3 million. However, it was determined during 2014, 2017 that it was inadequate. Even though it was never expected to abate odors 100%, it wasn't good enough. It simply wasn't good enough. So we needed to do more. It was apparent we needed to do more, and so we did. We installed RTOs. RTOs are systems also used in the industry. They're used, and we sought advice on those as well from other manufacturers. And we decided to go with the Odor system because that seems to be what is used solely in the pet food industry, that particular manufacturer, and with success. And it's it's a German company, which really, I tend to like products from Germany because they're very precise, and as just one rotating device, and so very low maintenance on them. So we went with that. Very, very expensive to purchase, very expensive to run because of the gas consumption. You're going to learn that we're running up at 1650 degrees Fahrenheit continuously. So the cost, just so you understand the comparison between the cold plasma and RTOs, we're currently at $13 million with RTOs. But we believe they're working, and we believe the data's proven that. Let me see what we have next. Randy, you want to speak to just the temperatures and how that all works?
So number of mitigation measures have been implemented in the last couple of years with the startup of the RTO. The first one is, and this is really an interesting thing, a lot of when I talk to folks, out and about, and I like to do that, get out and around the area and talk to people to see what their experience has been. I find out that they don't really fully understand, and that's understandable, how these plants work. In this case, at the Diamond Pet facility here in Ripon, essentially we have a situation where the tail of the plant is kind of wagging the dog. The plant is actually controlled by the RTOs. The plant cannot be operated without the RTOs up, operating at the temperature set point, which in this case is 1650 degrees Fahrenheit. There has to be sufficient capacity in those units. And basically, we know how much, the computer knows how much the RTO can process, and then it knows what's being requested to operate, and then it won't let you operate the plant with anything more than the RTO can handle. And then any dampers have to be all closed. It's got to be basically in the configuration where all the exhaust is going to go to the unit. So I don't want to take too much time on this slide right here, but I want to just point out that our RTO, regenerative thermal oxidation, is the best means of controlling organic compounds and reducing organic compound emissions. Reducing organic compound emissions doesn't eliminate 100%, but it's very, very, very close. It does it by subjecting the stream, the odorous or organic laden stream, to a high temperature for a certain period of time. So basically you're oxidizing or you're combusting those organic molecules. The industry standard has been about 1400 degrees for about a half a second. So basically, if you can bring your organics into a box and hold it at that temperature for about a half a second, you're up around close to 100% abatement. In the case of the Diamond Pet Food Plant, the RTOs were designed purposely for 4 lines of production. And they actually have a little over 1.5 seconds. So they're 3 times the residence time, if you will. And they operate up around 1650 degrees, actually a little bit above that. But that's the permit requirement, 1650. So you can't go below 1650. So the plant, I make that point just to show that the plant has been sufficiently designed to handle the 4 production lines, and actually to go beyond that, to now, if you go, longer and everything like that, it's questionable whether you get added benefit or because basically then you have there's a lot of other engineering considerations that come into play. But basically this shows you how a company goes about designing an RTO. So is there any way to get rid of that image up there, or is that just, we have an image on
It's
our
not
screen,
showing
or is it,
anything.
I'm not sure if that's showing up on the Zoom
Yeah,
presentation or
Oh,
not, but
whatever.
anyway, one of the things that we learned in the 2019, the first year of operation, 2019, was that there's a lot of things you can do to really make these RTOs operate well. You can't just turn them on and just walk away from them, forget about them. But you really do have to watch them, monitor them. And Diamond does that. They were set up and designed to monitor temperature, fuel usage, the valve operation, the exhaust temperature, and every day a Diamond employee conducts what we call a personal odor inspection. And what that consists of is, I lost it. There we go. Basically, there are a couple of very small holes that are on the exhaust of the RTO, and an operator goes out there that's been trained to do this, and he has a device that he can actually put inside the pipe. It's got a little stainless steel tube, about a half-inch diameter, and it cools the exhaust. And then he's able to actually just smell the exhaust, coming directly out of the RTO that's been abated. And the purpose of this, it's not what you call a quantitative measurement, but it's a qualitative, and it allows, to compare the odors from one RTO to the next, and to decide, okay, is there one of these units that needs to be cleaned? Is there anything going on here we need to be concerned about? Are they all smell about the same? Did it change much from yesterday? What's going on with this unit? It's mainly just keeping their hand on the pulse of the plant. There's a maintenance action called a manufacturer automatic maintenance sequence. Same thing you do in your home with your bake out on your oven when you go to clean it, sieve cleaning oven. Basically, 3 or 4 hour procedure. It can be slightly changed, but the whole point of it is that while this is operating, that unit is taken offline, presently taken offline, and fresh air is introduced to the RTO, and they slow down that valve I mentioned, the rotary device that channels in the inlet air and the outlet exhaust. They slow that down and just allow that, if anything is in there that's kind of gotten on that valve, to basically bake away. And several hours later, after they've gone through some of these sequences on all the different parts of that valve, they're able to conclude it and put it back into service. The interesting thing is, when that RTO is taken out of service, and for this process, the other RTOs, actually, they have inlet blowers, they speed up. So they speed up to handle the operation of the plant. And the one is completely kind of offline, if you will. Other measures that are taken on a daily basis as a facility walkthrough, and there's a community inspection that are conducted. Facility walkthrough consists of the project manager walking, all around up on top of the roof, looking at the doors, making sure everything's closed inside. And I'll mention, those of you that have been in the plant, that the odors in the plant they're just very, 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 very dilute, but still don't want anything like that even going out into the air. And that's inspected as well. Also, a community inspection is done, And there's I think 4 different Diamond employees that do this, drive around the area and just stop and, smell what's going on out in the air and see if there's anything that they notice that needs attention. So I mentioned odor complaints. The process is person can file a complaint online. The district has a way to do that. They also have a phone number, and we've provided the number of the planning department as well as an option. And I know most people don't want to call the plant, but they can. They can call the plant, and the plant will take action to look into it. And again, it doesn't matter if that odor complaint is a confirmed one, or not, or we're the first person that they call. The plant's going to take them very seriously and look into it, find out what's going on. So to that end, there are 3 tiers that have been established for responding to odor complaints. And as I mentioned, all odor complaints get a response of a tier 1. And the Air District has a list of things they do, and the plant has a list of things they do. And you can see some of the things that first thing the Air District does is dispatch an inspector as soon as possible. I think their fastest response was like 10 minutes to get to the site. We do need, and this is to anyone who might be listening, really do need to know where a general area where it's at, so that they know where to go, where the odor complaint was filed from approximately. And then they discuss that with the resident. That's kept private, confidential. It's not shared with anybody. And then if they confirm it, they confirm it. And then they go drive around the area. Diamond Pet is going to be doing their own evaluation and inspection, systems check of the RTO, how it's operating. They're going to look at the weather, look at the trends at the time of the odor complaint. If there's anything they can do to remediate, if there's anything going on at all, or they might go back and retest the RTO again, see if maybe they missed something. Maybe they need to look at that again. And then they record the findings, and they'll be letting the city know within 1 business day. And then on a monthly basis, there's a report that goes to the planning department, to Ken's office. This is difficult to see, but there is a blue arrow or blue line going from the west to the east. You can see it pointing at that 278. Basically, it's coming from 278 degrees. And it's going right across, showing where the Diamond Pet Food plant is right there, that white area in the center. And this is just an example of some of the weather data that we look at when we get an odor complaint. If we get an odor complaint over on the east side of 99, for example, east of the plant, over in the Mayenberg, Parallel Avenue, Laurelwood neighborhood, you look at this, you go, okay, that's possible. That could happen because there is, some dispersion, horizontal dispersion from the plant. But if you get a complaint on a weather day like this from way up north, up there at the top, you start scratching your head and going, something doesn't match here, doesn't fit. So it's good to at least know, what is going on weather-wise at the time of. And again, if you have no weather at all, no wind at all, you know that it's possible it could be anywhere. So it could happen anywhere. So this is one from March 8th, I think it was. Okay, Mark?
You got tier 2, and did we skip a slide or no?
Maybe I did. Maybe I skipped tier 3.
Yeah, tier 2
I
and
did.
3.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Okay, the other 2 tiers, tier 2 and tier 3. So these are tiers that have actions that start to get a little bit more serious, and especially tier 3. But tier 2 is activated if there are additional confirmed complaints in the same week, or if there is an unusual increase in unconfirmed complaints. Right now, as I mentioned, probably having a couple of unconfirmed complaints, 1 or 2, well, anywhere from 0 to 2 per month is what I would say we're having right now, roughly. We can go back to that data again. But we haven't had any confirmed ones since 2019. Yeah, 2019. But the plant will go and the extra mile on a tier 2, if there is an uptake in whether they're confirmed. Even if we do have a confirmed complaint, right away the plant is going to get excited. They're going to be looking what is going on here because it's been so long since we've had one. But same thing with unconfirmed complaints. They're going to go out and inspect all the exhaust lines. They're going to do a bake out or MAMs on all the RTOs, the odor inspection. There'll be a conference call with the district to get any input they can from the district, and then file the monthly report, as I mentioned. The tier 3 is really a bigger thing. That's where we continue to get an increase in confirmed odor complaints, and even more unconfirmed as well, but definitely more confirmed odor complaints. This is one where Diamond would reach out to the manufacturer, Dura Systems, bring them back to Ripon to take a look at what's going on and see what can be done to consider modifications or some upgrades to that whole abatement system. There's another option that can be considered, and that is actual reduction in operation. The equivalent of 1 production line can be taken. That would be done in consultation between Diamond and the city, but it is one of the options that is built into our odor management plan. All of these things, the daily inspections in the plant, outside, the RTO, these tiered levels of response are all contained in the odor management plan that the plant follows.
Yeah, and I think we have one last slide here. So the plant was originally laid out for 4 lines, and we took a look at that. The RTOs we have mentioned were designed, oversized to handle 4 production lines, and to through the computer control systems to divert air as 1 production line would go down, and RTOs just managed all that. We cannot run our process without the RTOs. It just won't allow us to do that. And just what do I mean by good neighbor philosophy? And what I mean by that is I strongly believe that Diamond Pet Foods has addressed these concerns all along the way. And we've done it certainly in my nature, very aggressively and assertively. And we've gone above the manufacturer's expectations, especially with DUR in mind. Randy didn't speak to it, but I will. The system was originally designed to run at 1500 or 1500 degrees Fahrenheit, and there was a certain amount of VOCs that are expected to be eliminated at that temperature. And we run at 1650 and are permitted at that, and are killing almost, what's the percentage? Almost 5% more than the original. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, plant was only required to do 95% in the permit. That was all they were
At
required to
1500
demonstrate.
at 1500
And they
degrees.
showed that at 1500.
So what are we getting now at 1650?
About 99 plus, 99.7, somewhere in that.
So that's the reason for the 1650 degrees, and the additional NOx that we produce, and the requirements that we're held to as a result of that, and the expense as well. But at this point, we're doing everything we possibly can, and we believe that to be, that's our good neighbor philosophy, if you will. So yeah, thank you for allowing us to participate in this. Ken?
All right, go through really quick here, just to summarize a little bit, and then we'll open it up for questions. Essentially, latest odor abatement equipment technology, the RTOs that were spoken about, they've been operational now for like the last 27 months. So we got a little over 2 years worth of data that is real-time data to see how these things are working. At this point, the overall odor complaints from the charts, from all the complaints that are received and charted, they're about at an average of 1.8 odor complaints per month is the average. That's all complaints, that's confirmed and unconfirmed complaints. Compared to, it was about a 7.0% average prior to the RTOs being brought on board. So this is data that's I think collected and submitted to the city monthly. So we've been tracking a lot of that. Initially, the RTOs were put on board ahead of time to kind of prove them out. And we thought we were hoping to get at least one winter season out of them. Here we are now with 27 months, 2 winter seasons under their belt. And so, like I said, I think the information has been collected showing that they have been dropping. Basically, the odor management plan was developed in conjunction with this is to ensure the consistent success of the RTOs the way they're operating now. You know, we want to keep those complaints at that lower level and not see them ticking up. And as such, you know, the city did actually commission a consultant to do a peer review of the odor management plan, known as the OS&E report. You guys, the Planning Commission probably have that in their packet. It does. It is part included with the EIR and such, and there's some comments on it in there. The purpose of the peer review was to ensure that the OMP, the odor management plan, was on point in addressing odor from the facility and provided the city and the general public with a really clear and concise mechanism to deal with any potential future odor should the need arise. So it was kind of, hey, if we're going to have odors in the future, we need a very clear way to deal with them and a very clear, concise kind of complaint process so people know where we're at in that process. So the odor management, that's the peer review of that kind of had some recommendations for the odor management plan. And those have now been incorporated into the odor management plan. They took all the recommendations from the peer review and have submitted them and put them into the odor management plan to make sure things get addressed appropriately. So the OMP incorporates, as was mentioned earlier, a tiered system for response to odor complaints. The tiered system within the OMP is meant to ensure the continued consistent operation of the odor abatement control system for the facility. The tiered system does several things, but it allows the city to continually monitor odor within the community and address any anomalies which may arise with the Diamond Pet Food Facility. Such tiered system would bring Diamond and the city of Ripon back to the table, so to speak, to address any significant increases in odor, including shutting down the 4th production line, reducing production back to the 3 that are originally permitted, until odor mitigation is back to status quo. So if there's some odor complaints coming from the facility and we're seeing an uptick, a significant uptick in odor complaints here, it'll get us back to the table. They might need to look at some other mitigation measures besides the RTO. They could be looking at some different areas of the plant just to kind of figure out why there's an uptick, where they're coming from, are the RTOs functioning properly? If they are, is there another source of the odor that's at the plant that's not being mitigated? And so that's what the tiered system's meant to do. So again, just to wrap it up here, basically to re-review, the next steps is, again, the April 19th Planning Commission meeting. They will have a public meeting to make a determination on the project and certify the environmental impact report. So I will turn it back over to you, Mr. Mayor, for questions and comments from the City Council or the Planning Commission. Diamond and staff can answer anything you guys might have, questions of them. And then after the commission, the council is done, we'll open it up to the public. We do have some folks that have joined us via Zoom that might have some questions as well. So.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I don't really have any preference on order. If you guys just want to throw questions out, or if you have a ton of questions and we need to have an order, that's fine too. But if you guys want to start, or Leo, you said you might need to take off early if you want to go first.
I just have one question. Is the EIR finished or is it going to be finished? And is there going to be a chance for us to see it before the 19th?
Yes, the EIR, it's actually in the process of being finished up. It has to be finished 10 days prior to the meeting. So it'll have to be what they call ready for publication or released by April 9th. So at that point, we'll make it public. It'll be on the website. It'll be part of the packet. We could share it with the council as well. So April 9th, it'll be finalized.
So once it's finalized, it's done, and the planning commission and the city council can act on the contents of that document without having to worry about it being a problem later?
Yes, so basically what will be asked of the planning commission at the April 19th meeting is for them to certify the EIR. So certification of the EIR means they agree with the findings in there, they agree with the mitigations in there. They're pretty much accepting the document as is, and that'll be the final step. It won't come before city council unless it gets appealed to the city council.
How many pages do they have 10 days to read?
That's what I was gonna ask.
It's nothing that I already haven't done, so you have plenty of time.
Depends on how serious you are about reading it, I guess.
We're super readers, Leo.
Yeah.
I have
just
no doubt. I'm worried about me, not you.
I just have one question just for my information. What does RTO stand for?
It stands for Regenerative Thermal Oxidizer. And basically another way to describe it is it's a large cylindrical, about 30 feet high, sort of a cylindrical piece of metal, kind of like a pipe sitting vertically, all closed off. It's got lines of exhaust coming into the bottom and then lines going back out, but the exhaust comes in, is preheated at the bottom, and that's kind of the magic. They do it to be efficient with the use of the fuel gas. And then it has that residence time I mentioned, that temperature inside that box, and the organic compounds that are the odors get cooked off. So
Makes sense. Okay.
that's basically what it is. Yeah.
Incinerator.
And then another quick question, and I think I know the answer to this because it wouldn't make sense for you to do. You don't still do the cold plasma in addition to the RTO because that
No.
would not make sense.
No.
Without, okay.
No,
Okay.
it's been, cold plasma's been disconnected and,
Okay.
No.
Thanks.
Let's go around. I'll come back over here.
So Randy, when you release the exhaust from the top of the pipe, so it removes odors. Does the RTO process put additional pollutants into it?
well, that's why it wasn't, the attractive option in the first place, because you're burning natural gas. So, you're getting NOx, you're getting CO, you're getting some small amount of particulate. You're getting a little bit of sulfur dioxide from what's in the natural gas. And then of course there's CO2, which is, a lot of people are concerned about nowadays, but anyway, those were all dealt with in the permitting of the RTO, but they're definitely a very real consideration because you can't just go out and start, you've got to get that permitted. You got Diamond provided quite a bit in the way of emission offsets to get permission to do that. But yeah, that is.
So where does that air go after it leaves the vent pipe?
Just it goes up just right there in the area. It's got a fair amount of buoyancy. It's about 250 degrees.
Okay.
So it just kind of goes up and then
Likely would go up and disperse beyond the area of Ripon.
Yeah.
Most likely.
pretty much depending on the wind and the weather conditions, and you can do modeling studies to identify where it might go. But the thing is, the wind changes in Ripon quite a bit. Summertime, you've got this strong prevailing wind coming out of the northeast, heading down the valley. Then in the spring and fall, the wind can change. Wintertime, it can be just completely still. And so then it stays pretty much, kind of in that area, but slowly disperses. It just takes longer. And that's why I think that most time when an inspector comes out, if there's been an odor complaint, somebody might just notice it just for a brief moment, notice the smell, and then the call, somebody comes out, or whoever is in the area can, whether it's a diamond person comes out, and by the time they get there, you can't smell it. It's just like a very, very passing transitory. It's very just, oh, there's pet food. Then it's like, where to go?
Thanks, Randy.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a couple of comments. First of all, I just want to thank you guys for the commitment that you've made to trying to correct this problem. It's obviously a very expensive solution, and it demonstrates, in my opinion, your care for this community. You guys provide some great jobs for people in the community and surrounding areas, and that you've endured for 3.5+ years to try to get this fourth line up and going is appreciated. You mentioned that there was a $13 million cost. Is that the capital cost for the
That's that is sir, that's the capital and the ongoing, everything
operational cost.
combined with the RTO project. No, the
what
initial purchase was a little under 4 million, just of the RTOs.
Okay. What is the, if you don't mind sharing, what is the annual operating cost? That's a tremendous amount of
I don't
natural
have
gas
that
you're
number.
burning.
I can tell you that we budget 250,000 a year just in ongoing RTO projects.
Very good. If you can go back to the temp curve slide, I'm not sure, maybe there's one with the various colored lines right there. So what I didn't see here is you've got a temperature on the x-axis. All the way to the far right is your 1650 degree mark. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, yes.
Okay, and so the colored lines.
So these lines came from typically when an RTO is being designed, Odor uses 2 compounds as a surrogate representing how the other organics are going to behave. They use benzene is one of them. The other one is toluene, which is like a benzene, but it's got a little bit more in the way of, a little bit more hydrocarbon added to the side of it. So those are the 2 compounds. So you're seeing 2 sets of curves. You're seeing the curves at a half a second, and then the curves at where there's 1.6 seconds of residence time. So if you were to put the exhaust inside the RTO and hold it there for 1.6 seconds at only, I can't even read it here, but at a temperature down around, say, I don't know, 600 or something like that, you'd only get about 80% abatement. But at the half a second, you get even much, much less. So that's what this kind of shows. But then more importantly, it's the fact that up there at the top, those curves all approach 100% asymptotically, when you get up around 1400 degrees.
Okay, I think I understand now. Thank you.
Yeah. There's a lot in that curve, actually. There's quite a bit to take in.
One other question. So and this is just based also on my own experience. I live on Laurelwood. In the winter of 19 and 20, your complaint chart showed 0 or maybe 1 complaint.
2020?
The winter of 19 and 20. So November through January of 19 through January of 20.
Okay.
So 15 months ago. Yeah, I think it's the previous.
Go back to the chart. It'll show
it's
the
the
monthly data.
There you go. And that's during the winter when normally you experience higher number of complaints, understandably, because of inversion layers and other weather factors. Then it bumped up, not significantly, but it bumped up this winter between November and January. And that was my experience also. I didn't recall smelling anything. I shared this with the planning director in the winter of 19 and 20. This winter I did. I smelled it a few times again. It wasn't, I wouldn't call it significant or stifling or overpowering, but there was presence. And I guess if anything, I was just surprised. Do you know why that may have occurred?
That is a great question. That is like the question. So first of all, I want to make the point that, you know, as Mark mentioned, we showed those production lines and the different equipment. It's just it's a constant ongoing process. Each line runs on its own. It's almost like each line is its own little plant, making whatever formula it's been called to make according to the demand. Diamond makes between 150 and 200 different formulas. So, and they're constantly cycling in and out. We don't believe that there's a big difference in the pet food formulas because, like I say, and it's hard to track it, but we now have a tool to do that, actually. And we didn't really get into it too much here, but we have a continuous emission monitoring system at the plant. And we're looking at other parameters, and we can see what's going on at the plant, you know, and we can tell, okay, what were they making at the time? But really, that's sort of a side issue because we think that the biggest thing is the weather. But that's by far the, and I guess we could probably do a better correlation of that uptick in odor complaints against the weather because we have the weather data now too. We could look at that as well, but that would be my best guess. There's nothing else going on at the plant that would, it's not like there's anything that's open, they're opening up or cleaning something or doing something, some different kind of process. There's nothing like that really happening.
Okay, thank you.
Jump in really quickly while you're close to page 15. There's a category on page 15, single household.
Oh, next one.
Does that indicate that 82% of the complaints came from one single household?
For 2020,
Here's your chart, Randy.
yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were 11 odor complaints, and right, that's kind of where we're at. That's kind of where we're at this point. And you can see that if you look at, well, I went back through all the years and looked at them, and I mean, back early on, you know, 2012, 13, 14, you know, 16, 17, lots and lots of confirmed complaints, lots and lots of unconfirmed complaints, and lots of households. A lot of people, you know, we're kind of at the point where we're down to just a few.
So basically with 11 complaints, 82%, 8 or 9 of those complaints probably came from one individual who just maybe have a very, very good sense of smell.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
And you bring up a really good point because odors are so, they're crazy. They're crazy to think about. I could tell you an experience I had recently, but I won't do it right now. But it basically involved me, you know, recalling an odor from something that happened early on, and I knew I didn't. It's like they just, they get in my mind at least. I mean, sometimes at night I can think back and harken back to. There's a lot to odor and detection. Everybody's a little different. So I want to make it clear. I am not saying anybody's crazy. I'm just saying odors are crazy.
Thank you. I would like to just echo what Gary said. You guys are great corporate citizens, and we really appreciate that. So thank you. And all your efforts in this regard have been great. Just a couple of quick questions. You showed an earlier slide that had a configuration of I guess, post installation of this fourth line, where you had these 4 lines and they were all this exhaust was flowing up through an RTO inlet header into what looked like 3 RTO units. Is that correct?
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So will the 4th line run concurrent with the other 3 lines, and will more volume be flowing up and out of those same 3 units? And if so, what do you expect from that? I understand you're saying it's been engineered for 4 lines. However, you haven't had 4 lines flowing into that. So are you adding a different shift, and it will be the kind of the same flow through the same units? So how's it going to affect the, how are you guys going to control the volume of flow that's going through these RTOs?
Well, as you said, the system is designed for that. And there's one other element to, it's sort of an assumed factor, and that is the amount of mixing that is taking place, so that when the exhaust gets into the RTOs, the hope is that it would be well mixed, that there'd be a good amount of turbulence inside the RTO, and there'd be, and the exhaust would have good contact with, at that temperature throughout the unit. I mean, there's hot, probably hot spots and cooler
I think you need to
spots.
speak to the ramp, the dampers and how it ramps up, and then the residence time is what I think what he's asking about.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So you're trying to understand how, let me make sure we understand and answer
Sure,
the
thank
question
you.
correctly. And I believe I understand, but Randy's better at it technically. How, if right now we're running 3 lines and now we're proposing 4 lines, how does that literally happen with the existing
I
three
got it.
three RTOs, correct?
That's a part of it,
Okay,
yes.
okay.
And what and how,
I'm sorry.
what
What's the
actually
impact
happens.
of
I got off,
So,
I was
yeah,
totally
on
answering a different
tangent.
question.
So
Okay.
talk about the
So what happens
CFMs
is
and the
that
retention.
each one of these RTOs has an exhaust fan on it, and they control the speed of that exhaust fan based on a pressure, there's a pressure setting on the header upstream. So what happens essentially is, if you have more flow, that those fans speed up.
So
handle.
they're not working at full capacity now, or not even where near. They're kind of like idled down.
Very good.
They're about.
That's the heart of the question.
Maybe
You're exactly right.
60% capacity right now.
And then
Is-
on the other chart, we intentionally, I don't want to say intentionally, we were trying to keep our time down, but we didn't get into all the details, but you're asking some very specific questions.
Right.
One of the charts talked about retention time.
Mhm.
And so with 4 lines, the retention time will back off a little bit, correct?
It's going to be about 1.5.
But right now,
seconds,
is
a
it
little bit more.
2.3?
It's over, yeah, it's like.
So right now,
2.3
we're at
right now.
2.3 seconds.
So the 1.6 you were showing is with all 4 lines up and
Yes.
running?
Yes.
But
Which
with,
is still within DER's, recommendations and all that type of stuff, and still have a much higher temperature than originally designed.
So then, as Dave had asked earlier about the additional pollutants and whatnot, you're not going to run these RTOs for a longer period of time necessarily than they're already running, and they'll still be running at the same temperature, but a fan will be outputting a little bit faster based on that their ability to do so.
They run continuously now with, like I said earlier, we can't run without them. The
Right.
system's not allowed to. So yeah, they'll run the same amount of time.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, not to pound on the commitment you guys have made, but I think it would have been a lot cheaper to pack up and go someplace else. So thanks for the commitment to sticking around and investing in the plant. That means a lot. Yeah, I kept crossing off questions because everybody kept asking the questions, but I do have a few. I would expect complaints to drop anyway, because I think people get tired of calling and complaining and nothing happens. So, there may be people out there that smell it and just don't call in a complaint. That's neither here nor there, but I know that happens. You answered the question about the RTO capacity, and it's certainly an incentive to make sure those things are up and running, because that's profits when those things shut down. So you need to make sure that they're working at capacity and they don't overload the system. But 2 questions that I didn't hear. So you made a comment. Well, first of all, when do we get a tour of the plant? Is that possible?
Anytime you like, sir.
I've never been through there. I'd like to go through it and, you know, this would make a lot more sense if I saw what you're doing. I mean, I understand it, but it makes a lot more sense when you go through it.
It'd be my pleasure.
So you made a comment that it smells inside the plant, obviously, which would make sense. How sealed is that plant? Is it possible that some of that air is getting out there? If the wind hits it just right, that's what people are smelling?
The study shows, and we don't believe that to be true. There is I don't know how you describe it, a small odor, and you can certainly experience that for yourself. But all the doors at the facility, if it's a bigger door that a forklift can go through, it's a high-speed roll-up door. So it's up and it's down. And all the man doors are with automatic self-closing devices on them. So when Randy spoke earlier about an engineer will walk around daily, just assuring and checking off that all those devices are working properly.
So when product's loaded and unloaded, it's all done inside.
Well, the unloading product is when you're unloading raw materials, there's not much of an odor to that. If you're unloading barley or something like that, you know, there's not much odor to that. It's literally the cooking process that creates the odor. And
Well, don't you bring in fish and meat and some other stuff too?
Yeah, pet food is designed, the constituents of pet food are basically grains, and proteins come from primarily meat sources. So we're using a lot of exotic meats, like bison and venison and buffalo and duck and lamb and chicken and those typical salmon, and those ingredients all come together. It's when you cook it, when you add steam and heat and the exhaust off of those is where the odor comes in. And those are all closed, completely contained, and through ducting systems that are directed to the RTOs through that common header that we spoke of earlier.
So just give you a little bit more information about, a little bit clearer on how the product as it's made moves through the plant. It basically moves through just like the old bank tellers where you have that vacuum tube, you know, you put your money or your checks in it, goes over to the clerk and it comes back to you. Well, it's the same way in this plant. You know, you've got these blowers that create that flow through these tubes that are about that big around, about 8 inches or 10 inches in diameter. And that pulls the product from process to process to process. But then when it comes out of the blower, that's ducted all to the RTO. That goes into it. It's an 80-inch header. It's huge. So it all goes there. And it's that was very, very strong. It's so many orders of magnitude higher than what you smell just walking around the plant. But
You guys
anyway,
have done a good job of getting the smell down. Have you seen the EIR, even samples of it yet? Do we even know what it may look like?
The environmental impact report? Yeah, we've been working with the Cent Environmental for the last couple of years on it. So yeah, I've read through it several times, and they're wrapping up the final EIR. So it goes through a process of looking at potential impacts of the plant. Obviously, the biggest impact at the plant that was noticed in the EIR is odor. So they look at all kinds of environmental impacts in an EIR, and then you have to obviously mitigate and bring anything that's significant down to less than significant impact. So odor was the one that really stood out when the EIR was first being composed, the notice of preparation.
So I don't know what the planning commission looks at or does in terms of this particular project, but is that done with a use permit right now, that if the odor gets way out of hand, or will the new one be done based on that? So if things get out of hand?
That's what the odor management plan does. The odor management plan is a mitigation measure for the facility. So if odors get to these different spots in that tiered system, there's different reactions that the plant does to mitigate confirmed and unconfirmed complaints. And if it gets to a point to where it's we're seeing an uptick in complaints on a very consistent basis, it allows the city to get back with Diamond and for us to kind of figure out what's going on. Is there additional things that need to happen? Maybe they're doing some dispersion modeling. Maybe they're hiring another consultant to come in and make sure if it's not the RTOs, if those are working just fine, where's the odor coming from? How do you mitigate those? So that last tier kind of gets us to that point. Right now, the average complaints are down at the 1.8 on average. Obviously, the winter months I think are a little bit higher, and summer months are lower. So that average complaint, if that starts ticking up quite a bit, then it's an opportunity for us to get back with Diamond and say, hey, these things aren't running at least the way they originally were, or is there something else? And that's kind of what that odor management plan is kind of the teeth behind making sure. I think Diamond's running at like an A+. At this point, we want to make sure they're keeping on the A+ strategy.
I'm just asking questions. Don't take this as being skeptical. So if they get into a tier 3 and they can't make things work, the plant gets shut down, right? I mean, they've got to shut it down on their own, correct? Until they can bring it back up to whatever.
So we have what the ability of the odor management plan does is the ability to shut down that 4th line. They already have permission to be running 3 production lines right now. They're asking for that 4th line, and that's what this is necessarily covering.
Right. So if in fact they can't meet the tier 3, and I'm talking just about the 4th line, that gets shut down or whatever the mitigation
Equivalent
is.
of.
Okay. All right. That's all I have.
And then just a really quick, and Randy or Mark can kind of correct me if I'm off base on this, but I think to answer a few of the questions I heard come up, the RTO exhaust, obviously with the 4th line, there's going to be more exhaust coming out of the RTOs. They were designed for the 4 lines, so there will be more exhaust coming out of them as they run it. However, if they're cleaning one of the RTOs, they're talking about doing a self-cleaning of those, and it ramps. So one of them comes offline, and there's only 2 RTOs operating. The plant production will ramp down to where there's only so much throughput of those 2 RTOs. So if I don't know if it's a correct assumption, you guys can correct me if I'm off on this, but the actual pet food production would ramp down, and it would be a little bit slower production at that point until the other one came back online if it couldn't handle it.
If we had 4 lines, that would be correct.
That helps explain a little bit of the way kind of the system is working,
So just to clarify that, the odor management plan is in conjunction with the city and the plant. That's an agreement we have with them, the city has with them? Is that?
That is a mitigation measure of EIR. So that in order to get impacts down to a less than significant impact, EIRs usually have mitigation measures that have to take place. The OMP, the odor management plan, is a mitigation measure. So it's an ongoing plan that obviously I think even in the plan it talks about revisiting that like every 5 years just to make sure it's still operating the way the plan's still functioning the way we intended it to make sure that complaints are down at an acceptable level. That is a mitigation plan that's going to be continuous for here on out.
To that point, I guess who would that come when it comes to, so there's enough complaints to where it triggers mitigation through the odor management plan, that would go to you then and would that come back to the city council at all, or how does that work?
Yeah, like I said, it gets the city and Diamond back at the table together. I think there's a lot of things that would be put back on the table at that point. They keep talking about throwing the kitchen sink at this thing to figure out how to fix if there's a huge uptick in odor complaints. And so trying to figure out what's happening. There's a lot of components of odor at a facility. I think the cooking is obviously the largest that's being tackled right now. Is there something that was missed, or are the RTOs not functioning the way they should, or everything will be looked at. So at that point, city council will probably be involved with some conjunction with some meetings with Diamond and their consultants to figure out how do we fix what's going on again.
I have another question.
Again, not to beat a dead horse, but I think based on the commitment we've seen already, I don't expect that to be the case. But related to the odor management plan, is that, say 10 years down the road, Diamond decides to sell the facility to someone else or continue to produce pet foods out of it, does that go with that project, or would you go through this process again?
It goes with the project. It goes with the plant. So if Diamond's not operating the plant and you get a user in there, it's like, hey, we don't like spending this much money on natural gas. We're going to turn these things way down, and there's a lot more odor coming out. Obviously, we have an opportunity to go deal with somebody else on that.
Can I have another question? So you talk it's going to be driven based on complaints, but The concern I have is it ought to be like verified complaints or valid complaints, or not just a complaint. Because if a neighborhood gets together and says, everybody call in, you got a bunch of complaints.
There's a combination of verified versus unverified in there. It is that we didn't want to just say, hey, let's get a group of people together just to do a bunch of unconfirmed complaints to get us to that point. However, I don't think you can just ignore unconfirmed complaints. I mean, I think it's going to be something in conjunction with us working with Diamond saying, hey, there's been an uptick in these complaints here. And it's not something that's, this 1 week we got a bunch of complaints. It's got to be an uptick in complaints, over a little sustained period of time there to say, where everybody's kind of recognizing and realizing there's something going on here. And that gets us to that point. Obviously, confirmed complaints are a little different, but quite honestly, I've gotten complaints here at City Hall and I've gone out to verify 10 minutes, 15 minutes later in the same spot, you don't smell it. Sometimes it hangs around longer. It's very weather driven. Like I think Randy explained, when they first started operating, during the winter months, it was even over here at City Hall and down kind of the Main Street corridor. I think you could see some of the kids going into school and they had their sweatshirts over their nose and it would stick around for a little bit. Now, sometimes you get a complaint and it's there for 5-10 minutes and it's gone. So if you don't get out there right away, which the air district, if they can't get out there right away, it's not going to be a confirmed, but it doesn't mean the odor wasn't there. So, it's a combination.
I would think if you had a real uptick, Diamond would probably know just as well if it was something really that bad.
They'll be dealing with tier 1 and tier 2 anyways with that, because they say they're going to respond with tier 1 as tier 1 complaints. Those are any complaint they get, whether it's confirmed or not. They're doing a whole sequence of checking the RTOs, possibly doing the cleaning sequence on them if necessary. So there's a whole step. I mean, the idea is to never get to tier 3, but the tier 3 is kind of a stopgap there. If there's really an issue, it gives us an ability to get back together and get it resolved.
Good segue into my next question, Mike. Thanks. As you deal with the air board, I mean, I guess are they, and maybe you guys would know better, but are they, when they come out, and I think some of the things that I've experienced living next to Gary is when you get the smell over there, sometimes it seems like just a dog food smell. Sometimes it's just a sewer plant smell. And sometimes a combination of the two. But when the air board comes out, are they, I guess, trained to identify, how do they determine whether it's caused by the sewer treatment plant versus dog food or pet food or whatever?
And I think that's kind of where we're getting into some of the confirmed and unconfirmed, because there has been some issues in the past with and changing of personnel at the air district where Diamond might be getting blamed for an odor and it's maybe not necessarily them. But you do realize we do have a milling company here in town that makes chicken feed. So they are grinding grain and all that stuff. Could be odors coming from something like that if it's a grain smell that somebody's smelling. That's a very old plant there. They don't quite honestly have any odor control in that plant, not anywhere close to what Diamond's got. So there has been some, I think, training. Diamond's helped to try to train so they're not getting blamed for our sewer ponds possibly or another plant, but that is a kind of ongoing struggle, I think. And that's why the odor management plan gives a little flexibility in there just to, I think, take a common sense approach to this thing and say, all right, there's something going on here. We need to sit down together.
Is that a bullet point in there? Take a common sense approach. That way, if 10 years from now, we're not back at this again. Yeah. Was there any more questions from the commissioner and council? I believe there's some folks on from the public. We can open that up. We can do sort of a little series here. I don't know that we need the timer for it but let's try and keep, we don't need speeches, but if you have questions, feel free to ask questions. Yes, step forward if they're on and raise your hand, whatever they do on Zoom, and unmute so we can hear you if you're there.
How many do we have? 7? 5? What do you can't count?
Can they confirm that they can hear us?
So they can definitely hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay, thanks.
So there's someone with the hand.
Does it have a name or a number or?
Oh, I'm sorry, that was Dan Nunes, yeah. No, I had a couple questions, but they were answered throughout, so I'm good.
Okay. Anybody else have any, Christina Madsen?
Yeah, hi, this is Christina Madsen. I just had a question actually about the noise level to know how that will be affected with the addition of a fourth line, if anyone can speak to that.
I don't know.
Noise,
Noise level. I wouldn't expect the noise to be any more than what it currently is. Yeah, I don't know how else to answer that. The RTOs, that won't change. The rest of the process will be the same. Yeah, so I can't imagine there would be any more decibel levels than what we currently have.
Okay, so when you have like one or two lines, like, can you tell a difference? You can't, there's no difference between having one or two or three lines running at
No,
all?
Christina, so the plant now with 3 lines, and Randy spoke to, we have in excess of 150 formulas. The plant of all Diamond's plants is the one that is the most complex in its operation, and therefore, and has the largest customer base. And so we are often shutting down a line and starting up another line. And so me personally, I've never experienced, or have I ever heard of anyone else making statements about peaks and valleys, if you will, or highs and lows in noise. So there's not much of a difference between one line versus another.
Will that be
Okay,
addressed
thank
in the
you.
EIR? Well, noise will be addressed in the EIR, yeah?
Yeah, noise is addressed in the EIR. It was not addressed. It wasn't identified as a significant impact on the EIR, so there's not going to be much as far as mitigation or anything on that.
Did that answer the question, or do you have anything further?
No, that I understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to make a comment?
Not seeing any hands or any microphones.
Maybe some of the questions were answered then that were open. That's good. Then we had a good meeting.
So I did just, if there's no other questions, they will have an opportunity at the April 19th Planning Commission meeting to speak on the subject too. So we, I think just in the news today with our colored tiered system with COVID, I do believe we'll have an open Planning Commission meeting on April 19th, probably to some extent, might be limited capacity, but they are welcome to come to the meeting on April 19th at 6 o'clock here at City Hall and speak on the project at that point.
Good. Okay. Any other questions or final closing comments from anyone? Nope. All right. Well, seeing none, thank you guys for being here today. Thanks again for putting it together. And
thank you very much.
Meeting adjourned.